Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Oh my goodness. We've got a show for you in this one. Thanks for checking in the best Houston sports podcast, our Texans-Browns postseason, post-game show. Robert with Sports Radio 610, Shaun Bijani out at NRG Stadium. And Shaun, that was fun, man. That was fun.
That was awesome. The best ever? I don't know. I had a whole bunch of people today that actually texted me that were in the stadium saying, man, this is the loudest I've ever heard NRG in my life. Pretty crazy, right? I mean, I have my stories, my experiences. I don't know if today matches up, if it kicks everything else's butt. Recency bias is a thing. I don't know. Maybe I'll just go like D'Amico and Caserio have been saying all year. Last year doesn't matter. Years past don't mean a thing. It's about the 2023, 2024 Houston Texans. This was freaking awesome. I got to tell you this. I don't remember watching a more complete football game on as big a stage as this. Maybe that Bengals game, but that wasn't as dominant. That was dominant, 31-10 back in 2011, but it wasn't 45-14 dominant, back-to-back pick six dominant. Your quarterback just playing flawless football, offensively dominant. This was one for the franchise history books.
This was the most dominating playoff performance in Houston's 50-year NFL history. Oilers, Texans combined, it's not even close. If you put that first quarter against the Chiefs a few years ago in the playoffs with the first 2.5 quarters of a certain Oilers-Bills playoff game, that's as close as I come, Shaun. It didn't quite finish. They didn't quite finish those two games, but they finished this one all right. And let me say this also. You definitely needed Davis Mills again in the fourth quarter of a Browns game, but this time for all the right reasons. And CJ Stroud, by the way, first playoff game as a rookie, 16 for 21, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's a rookie.
Yeah, there's been 2 times this season where we've all, if we're being honest, wanted to see Davis Mills in an actual football game. And 2 of those times have come within the last month. And it's been in garbage time when the Texans have won games handily and had it sealed up. So it was, you couldn't have drawn it up any better than this. I was talking to George Fan about it after the game. He obviously been able to be in that next man up role a couple of 3 different times this season, back at right tackle for them, what it meant for him, what it means for the team, the message it sends, all good stuff you can check out on my Twitter at Shaun Bijani. But what he was saying is that, offensively, defensively, the complementary football that they played before, you can reference Jacksonville, you can reference Pittsburgh. This game, it's the cream of the crop, at least as far as this season is concerned. And again, to do it at a point in time in which, look, bodily, like guys you could see with your eyes, never mind how well their bodies are actually functioning. They weren't 100%. They were as far from 100% as you probably could be and still suit up in an NFL uniform. Will Anderson, I don't know what you'd had to do to peel that guy off an NFL football field, but that is the kind of stuff, Robert, that fuels this team. They see a young guy, a rookie, playing through pain and then getting stronger, getting better within the game itself. That sends a message. This team was out for blood today.
Yeah, you saw his foot sort of twitching, and he was like a horse at the Kentucky Derby that you knew was going to win because he was so ready to go as he was getting into the gate. And I just want to remind everybody out there, we need you in the comments. If you're watching, we want to hear from you. Tell your friends, text them, let them know that we're up and running and ready to go, and we want to hear from you. And we're going to unpack it possession by possession because, Shaun, I want to relive this whole thing again. I want to just talk about it all over again. Browns' first possession, Denzel Perryman, big tackle for loss, helps lead to a quick punt. Texans' first possession, also one and done, a punt, but Schultz, a key drop on what could have been a lot more than a first down, a rare mistake there for the Texans, but Browns go 3 and out with their next shot, which leaves the Texans in great field position near midfield. Stroud hits Nico with a big third down pass, gets Nico at the 3-yard line. But Shaun, they couldn't punch it in. Near disaster, shovel pass, an unusual Stroud keeper before a third down completion. Little weird sequence by Slowick in the play calling right there, I thought.
Stop it right there, okay? What did you think this game was going to be when you saw just the first couple of offensive possessions and the first couple of defensive possessions? Look, the second one, a little bit better than the first, right? You get the 3 and out, the pressure by Anderson on that 3rd and 5 looks strong AF. But my gosh, offensively, Schultz dropping that can of corn. It was just, my gosh, you get an explosive and then boom, like that. Here we go. You're shooting yourself in the foot. If it's not penalties, then it's just not executing. And Schultz has had a couple of those here within the last month. That was his only. He only had 1 catch today. Who knows what kind of tone that could have set early on? Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Maybe Bobby decided to dial some different things up and go in a different direction once he saw that. But boy, when the Texans have to settle for 3 points after a Nico Collins 38-yard catch, you dial up 2 explosives and 2 straight possessions. It's like, oh boy, this is what you can't do. You can't settle for field goals. You can't shoot yourself in the foot. You were just like waiting. At least I was, like a ticking time bomb. When's Flacco and this offense going to strike? When are they going to make you pay for your own faults? It came, but the Texans were able to stifle it almost immediately.
I want to say hello to Noel, who's watching, a regular fan of ours. Good to hear from you. You got that right. Shaun, you were a little worried right there, of course. But Browns first play from scrimmage, next possession, you got more worried because Steven Nelson beat over the top, 45 yards to the 30. Nelson beat deep a couple of times. Remember the last Browns game? Shaun, that sets up a Browns touchdown, and this is what you're talking about. You're like, oh, God, here we are. We're doing it again against the Browns, not getting, a touchdown out of that, and then they come back with a big play, that one of those chunk plays.
Yeah, it was too easy for the Browns on their 3rd offensive possession. I mean, they went 6 plays, 75 yards. It took 3 minutes and 20 seconds to do it. They had 1 chunk play on a 1st and 10, that 45-yard catch. They didn't put the Browns in any tough 2nd and long, 3rd and long situations. Petrie was absolutely terrible on that series. Flacco scrambled for 8 yards to extend that drive. It was just like I said, oh boy, here it comes. The Browns, they're going to do tonight what they've really done in every game that Flacco's been a quarterback, with exception to that game 3 weeks ago against the Texans, where they hit you underneath and then boom, drop a bomb on you. And with the Texans, it was like bomb, bomb, bomb. They could do that. They dialed it up routinely. They didn't need the run game. They didn't need the underneath stuff. They just said, we're going to beat you over the top. And when you beat Steven Nelson, if you coming into this game, you said, oh boy, if Steven Nelson and Derek Stingley can be healthy and on the field, 90% of the time tonight, you definitely like your chances more tonight than you did 3 weeks ago when that week 16 blowout lost to the Browns. And that happens on the first few series. It's like, oh boy, we're in for a long one. Thankfully, the Texans figured some things out defensively and ended up getting to Flacco just enough and rattling him early.
Andres says, bring on the Ravens. Mario said it was a nail biter in the beginning, but CJ settled in. Yeah, that's a little spoiler alert. He did kind of settle into this game. And the Texans get a huge run on the next possession by Singletary. Big pass to Mechie on the sideline, 56 yards on 2 plays, then a perfectly set up screen pass to Nico for 6, Shaun. Incredible response by the Texans after that early touchdown by the Browns.
Yeah, what is that? 2 games in a row in which you've had the longest run, or maybe that's 2 out of the last 3 games where the Texans have had their longest runs of the season. The Singletary 24-yard run a couple of weeks ago, then you get a 29-yarder tonight, and then bam, John Mechie had the game of his professional life, game of the season tonight. And I think it was only 3 catches, 43, 44 yards, whatever it was, but they were all huge and none bigger than that 27-yard reception where I just felt like the entire stadium and probably the thousands upon thousands that were watching on their television screens and listening on the radio just said LFG. John Mechie, big moments. Here's another opportunity for you. And he comes and he takes it. That was huge. And then boom, Nico Collins, 15-yard touchdown strike. That was beautiful blocking on the screen right there from Laramie Tunsil. That cannot be understated. Laramie Tunsil had a badass game tonight. Did an incredible job against that Browns pass rush and really set the tone there, I think, with the physicality that he showed on that screen, fighting through another knee injury, friendly fire tonight. Big game for Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, he scared me to death after that because there was the extra point. He got rolled up on by his own guy, friendly fire Jones, and that was worrisome. But, he'd come back, like you said. Next possession, Texans defense and busted secondary continued to be an issue. I mean, that's been the thing. Very first play, Flacco to Bryant, 47 yards to the 28. And Shaun, that leads to a shovel pass touchdown to Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, and again, it was too easy. The 47-yard catch and run by Bryant there, that set the tone. They went 4 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, 6 yards, 11 yards, and then the touchdown. I mean, that is why people talk so much about the big splash plays. And you've probably heard, the term explosive more this year than you ever had before. Well, that's the NFL. That's kind of, as defenses try and figure out to parse and, diminish these creative offenses, the offenses counter back. I mean, they're finding holes, in soft zone coverages and just mistakes when eyes get dirty, as D'Amico Ryans like to say. You hit somebody for 46 yards, 47 yards on a 1st and 10, more times than not, teams are going to score. It's just a simple fact. And for the Texans, if they're going to give those up, you have to be able to counteract that with explosives of your own. And Bobby Slowick maybe called one of the best games, maybe the best game that he had all season. To do it against a team like the Browns with that defense, with all of the money they spent. I mean, they out-talented you. Maybe they out-athleted you. To dial up what he did tonight, I was really, really impressed.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I'm going to talk a little bit more about him in a second. Andres points out highest scoring playoff game in Texans history. I don't think I needed to look that up. I watched all the Texans games. This was pretty crazy. And then the Texans, after that score, they respond again, in which they do. And Stroud responds again. Simple throw, floats it to Brevin Jordan. 78-yard touchdown, Shaun.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Second longest TD catch by a tight end in playoff history, I believe.
Maybe so. 76 yards. It's got to be up there. Whatever it is, it was a game changer for the Houston Texans and that offense tonight. The ability by Brevin Jordan, to get into space is just been impressive the last month and a half. The guy's been fantastic. I thought coming into this game, Brevin Jordan was going to be one of, maybe not the, but one of the X factors for the Texans. And here's why. That Browns game, it's easy to kind of just excuse it. Let's not pay attention to it. There's nothing you can really take from it. No. Brevin Jordan only played in 25% of the offensive snaps 3 weeks ago against the Cleveland Browns. Prior to that, and since then, he's averaged 50% of the offensive snaps. He's been very much a part of what the Texans want to do and have really needed to do for a couple of things. One, to establish a run, get an extra tight end there for some blocking, for some disguises, and then two, on some play action stuff, which the Texans did a little bit more tonight, and some bootleg you saw with Jordan in the action there. Two is they're able to get him into space because the defense has to respect him as a blocker. And as shorthanded as the Texans had been in the receiver core, he's been very valuable. And fortunately for the Texans and Slowick and Stroud tonight, he was very, very valuable for them. And none bigger than that 76-yard catch and run for a touchdown.
The Texans D gets back on track after that. Christian Harris, nice open field tackle on a screen. We're going to get back to Christian Harris and talk about him for a long time. But Derek Barnett also, the third down sack, quick 3 and out. Stroud had a shot to break it open. And this was another one that early on you had that Schultz misconnection and then a wide open Nico on a fly route, Shaun.
That was something I don't remember seeing it all this season from CJ Stroud. He had the time. He stepped up in the pocket. Collins had single coverage and blew past his man, as you said, was wide open. Tell me the last time you saw CJ Stroud airmail one of his receivers. Now, I didn't get a chance to see the replay on the monitor, but everything that I'd heard in the press box was that, it looked like Collins had stumbled at some point on his route, maybe right around the time where he was breaking the cushion, from the defensive back. Maybe so. I mean, you could clearly see him kind of stumble as he noticed that the ball was going to be further than his route. So he tried to, speed up. It looked like
a car. It reminded me of a cartoon where
Yeah,
he was just
he
like on the
Roadrunner.
treadmill, like he was trying to go real fast and he just couldn't quite get there. And he tried to speed himself up.
But you hadn't seen that. And that was, it's like, man, is that going to be one of those things, that, something like you hadn't seen before all season long rears its head, tonight, like is Stroud a little too amped up? That was a thought that had crossed my mind, there at that point in time, even though we'd seen Stroud already make a couple of really nice plays in the pass game and certainly looked calm, cool, collected. It just made you think a little bit. You never know when a game can turn on a dime. And it felt like, man, that could be costly. And thankfully it wasn't.
Another great defensive possession for the Texans after that. 1 first down and punt. Texans' last possession of the half. Let's get to that one because that's a good one. Big screen pass to Nico for some chunk yardage. Looked like they'd have it inside the 10 on a Singletary run, but Mason called for kind of a weird-looking holding penalty. I couldn't get too mad at Mason about that one. Then Stroud finds the wide open Schultz for 37 yards. Shaun, I'm going to piggyback off of what you said. And this drive just made me punctuate all of that. Slowick, beautiful play calling, misdirections. He took advantage of an aggressive Jim Schwartz defense, I thought.
Yeah, I think that's you hit the nail on the head. There's no doubt about that. And I thought it was really huge, for Slowick to dial that up. They said, you know what, we're going to go right back to Dalton. And look, it looked like Dalton had to kind of catch that ball twice. Maybe it was just kind of him securing it, on that second little pump with the ball. But 37 yards, that was absolutely money. I think that was another trend that we saw tonight where Slowick, you'd seen it with D'Amico, they're not afraid, nor should they be, to go back to guys that maybe didn't make a play before. They're going to give them another opportunity because they trust their guys. And Bobby Slowick, D'Amico Ryans, they talked about it all season, really made an emphasis, to bring that up this week coming into this game, is especially when asked, about why CJ Stroud's had so much success in down the field passing game this season. It's that he really trusts his receivers. He believes in them. And that was a perfect example right there. A guy that didn't make a play for you earlier in the game. You're going to dial something up. If the look is there, you're going to give him a shot. And Schultz came through in a big way.
Yeah, front runner says that pass rush came alive. And at the end of the half, beautiful play. Texans end the half with a Grenard and Will Anderson sack. Great way to end the half. Let's go to the third. We're going to come back to Will Anderson, and Shaun had some stuff off the top about him. Nothing doing for the Texans on their first drive. The Browns start to put together a drive and look like they could get momentum. Grenard leaves the game. Looks like his ankle was bothering him. You're starting to worry a little bit. But then Derek Barnett steps in and forces an off-balance duck from Flacco. And Shaun, that's when Steven Nelson catches a Texas leaguer, I'll call it, gets a convoy, and it's a pick six.
That pressure by Barnett, man, that was his, I think maybe it could have been his third pressure, but second for sure, because he had the sack earlier in the game where it went for an 8-yard loss early on. Dude was an absolute wrecking ball. I'm amazed at the impact that Barnett has had. You talk about Khalil Davis and Tier Tart, who was inactive tonight, but Barnett, Adrian Amos, like there's so many guys that you have to give Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, massive props for being able to identify the talent, identify the fit, and bring these guys in the heart of the season and get massive contributions out of them when you need it the most. And, my gosh, off the edge, when you've got a banged up Will and a banged up JG, and you need these guys to perform because, Amajai Sanders, hey, he's been pretty solid since he's gotten some more playing time in recent weeks, but he's not like a great run defender, and he's a little slimmer, and maybe he can get overpowered by some of your bigger tackles, and you're limited at what you can do with him. You needed everything you possibly could have gotten out of a guy like Derek Barnett. He made that play happen. But also, too, Flacco and the receiver, that's the difference. You saw it in that play. In my mind, I don't care how old Flacco is. The fact of the matter is he does not, in 6-7 weeks being the quarterback of this football team, have near the connection and chemistry that CJ Stroud and his receivers do. Rookie or not, veteran or not, you can see it. It's clear as day. CJ talks about the scramble drill, and his receivers do all the time. They are just right here, man. And that receiver, I don't remember who it is, maybe Elijah Moore, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that ball was intended for, the one that Nelson picked off. Moore's got to recognize, when he gets his head around, at the middle of that route, when he's about to go and maybe break it off, he has to recognize Flacco's, under a little bit duress. Break that route off, sit down, and give your quarterback a chance. Flacco thought he was going to do that. Didn't. He threw it to where he thought Moore was going to be. And as you said, can of corn, Texas League, or whatever you want to call it, Nelson made a great play and returned it for the pick six.
Yeah, I want to bookmark something about Flacco and Amari Cooper. Shaun, don't let me forget, but I want to keep the Texans momentum going here a little bit because not just that they got that convoy into the end zone from Steven Nelson, but they did it without making any stupid block in the back penalties or anything like that. Some good blocking downfield by Cashman and some of the other guys. And it was at this point that JJ Watt tweets out, pick sixes in the playoff games. It's what H-Town does. Let's go. And so from there, JJ not only responded to that, but guess what? He kept them going with that tweet because next possession, Browns going for it on fourth down. Christian Harris, who just left just a play, I think he had left maybe banged up the previous possession or something like that, steps in front of the Flacco pass, and then, Shaun, the rest is unreal.
Yeah. Harris, it was on that previous defensive possession. He left on that 2nd and 6. It looked like he had a left wrist injury, at least from what I gathered. And so, he comes out. I don't even think he went to the medical tent, just kind of shook it off. Maybe they threw some extra tape on there. Boom, is ready to go right back out for that next defensive series. And, as you mentioned, gets that pick 6 on the 4th and 2. And that was fantastic, man. And I thought immediately about a couple of things that Matt Burke and D'Amico Ryans had said just this past week coming into this game when asked about Christian Harris and how much he's improved his game. They were talking about it from the physical nature, D'Amico particularly. Hey, how much have you seen Christian Harris and his growth? And he said, man, this guy has grown leaps and bounds in terms of his physicality. Well, what I've noticed more so over the course of the last maybe 2+ months of this season from Christian Harris is his eyes. He's identifying what's going on in the backfield, and that allows him to just use that muscle memory. He knows where he's supposed to be in his defensive assignment. He can play with almost like eyes in the back of his head. He played it perfectly, sunk underneath that route, jumped it, and made a great play on an easy pick 6. A lot of linebackers are going to get that, and he certainly stepped up and made a great play in that situation, did what he was supposed to do because D'Amico put him in great position.
And I'm not done with Christian Harris because Brown's driving again. Christian Harris, another clutch play on 4th down, comes on the blitz, throws Flacco to the ground. And Shaun, it just made me think of 12 years ago. It was a coming out party for JJ Watt in the playoffs. JJ Watt wasn't this incredibly dominating player his rookie year. And this is Christian Harris' second year, but it feels more like this is kind of where everything is coming together for him late in his rookie year, because last year, it started off with those injuries and all that sort of stuff. This was the Christian Harris coming out party.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's been kind of, coming out, and it's just, it's one of those immeasurable things you hear a lot of guys, I would imagine, this time of year, especially particularly young guys that are coming from big schools that have been on big stages, maybe played in some big bowl games, championship games, understand what the pressure's like, the winner go home setting. Hell, man, even for rookies, the Texans have really been playing in playoff type of ball games since that second Jacksonville game this season. That was a game that, you'd felt like, boy, if you could beat the Jags, then you can really solidify your position within the division. And even with the Jets loss and, the couple of losses they'd suffered over the course of the last month of the season, it just kind of broke perfectly for them. And when maybe they didn't even really deserve it, like the Jets game, where the Colts lost on the same day, the Jags lost on the same day, and they just kind of breathed new life into this team. And it's something that Will Anderson's talked about, like, hey, don't sleep on us. We're coming. We're hungry. We want this just as bad, if not more than anybody else. And it's because maybe a guy like Will Anderson, maybe a guy like CJ Stroud, maybe a guy like John Mechie, whoever, they had that opportunity in college and they didn't get it the way that they wanted to, or they won a title and didn't get a second one. Whatever it is, they want this one. And it doesn't matter if it's premature, from our perspective, it's 2023. They've got the opportunity and they're viewing it like they're as entitled to, playing the next game the following week just as much as anybody else is. And so I think that kind of belief, wherever it really spawned from, whether it be the rookies in conjunction with D'Amico, whatever he's brought and said, and the culture that he's created here, it's a powerful, powerful thing. And I think that's that immeasurable difference maker that you have seen come through with guys like Christian Harris, guys like Will Anderson. Jacques Caserio talked about it earlier this week, Robert. And he said, we're not doing anything different in terms of preparation. If we're doing something different, then we've been doing something wrong. And we believe in what we're doing. I'm paraphrasing here, but he'd said what really stuck out to me is that the only thing that I'm telling guys, and this is from Jacques Caserio, the defensive line coach, is that you have to demand more of yourself this week. And when you think you can't give any more, give more. And it sounds like a lot of fluff, but what did you see tonight from Christian Harris? What did you see tonight from Will Anderson, Jonathan Grenard, Laramie Tunsil, dudes that ain't anywhere close to 100%, and they go out and ball out, make game-changing, impactful plays. That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, and just the Christian Harris thing, I want to just make sure people understand this. Christian Harris is starting to look like a Pro Bowler. He's starting to look like maybe a future All-Pro. And you put a young guy like him in the linebacking core. You've got a young guy like Will Anderson in the defensive line core. You've got a young guy like Stingley in the defensive back core. You've obviously CJ Stroud, Nico Collins. Position group by position group, the Texans look like they have studs starting to pop up all over like weeds. It's nuts. And just for the icing on the cake, and then we'll finish off the game stuff. Devin Singletary, 19-yard touchdown. Shaun, I was kind of rubbing my eyes. I'm like, wait a second, am I seeing double? Does that say 45-14 early in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, it was incredible, man. I asked a few of the guys after the game, like, at what point in time in this game did you feel like you had this game? And George Fant, when the clock hit zero, because you never know. It's the NFL type of thing. You got that. Some guys said after the Harris pick six. Other guys said, when Singletary, punched it in and gave us, that final touchdown, that's when you kind of feel like, yeah, we got it. Somebody else said, well, when Davis Mills goes out there, you're feeling pretty good about it, in a situation like that. And all are true, really. But yeah, you look up at that scoreboard and you see 45 points and you're just beside yourself. You don't know, you know what you just watched, but do you really? It's just something that you hadn't seen before, not even this season. When change has been happening right before our eyes, when Andrew Beck is scoring an 85-yard or whatever touchdown return that was against the Jacksonville Jaguars earlier this season. And that was such a great complimentary win on all aspects, that blowout win against the Jags. And then you go out and do the same thing, against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you're watching this, and then CJ's leading, come from behind drives in the fourth quarter against the Bucs and the Bengals. This was just a team that felt slighted, that felt disrespected, that wasn't getting the national attention that it felt like it deserved, despite, where it had come from, this organization, where it's been the last 3.5 years. They felt like nobody's looking at the 2023 Texans, and we're going to show them. And you saw it tonight. This was a team that was out for blood, and they damn near drew it against the Cleveland Browns.
Nobody knows the early Saturday afternoon playoff game like the Texans, baby. We're the pros at it. Don't screw with us on an early Saturday afternoon playoff game. According to Next Gen Stats, Tunsil, 12 matchups with Myles Garrett, 0 sacks, 1 pressure. You talked about Tunsil before. The guys in the comments, they want to talk about him. They're like, oh, where's that guy, Myles Garrett? Andres reminded me of the stat, but trust me, Andres, I'd had it written down. I was waiting to pull it out on you guys. Mario says Tunsil was balling. George says, who's Myles Garrett? Didn't hear his name all game. Yes, sir, Garrett, who, all that. I mean, we just got one comment after another. They love the fact that Laramie Tunsil just dominated that matchup when Myles Garrett was getting all the smoke before this game.
Myles Garrett, 3 tackles, 2 solo tonight, no quarterback hits, no TFLs, no pass deflections. He was neutralized, and I can't wait to go back and just look at this one again and just really watch it as a fan, and just pay attention to some other stuff. But I can't remember the stat. I just know it was good coming into this game. The matchup between Myles Garrett and Laramie Tunsil. Laramie Tunsil's whooped that butt time and time again. He's owned that matchup, and he did it tonight. That means something, man. When you, because that's what they're looking at. That's what these individual players are looking at. Yes, it's about the team. Yes, it's about fitting in the scheme and doing your job. But your job, if you're Laramie Tunsil particularly, who's going to be lined up across from you, and it's mano-a-mano, and I've got to protect my quarterback. Well, that sucker did that tonight, on the biggest stage at this point in the season, and dominated. Did his job, and maybe did it better, considering the factors and what he himself, even within this game, had to kind of fight through. Did it better than he ever had before in his career. I really believe that. How scary was it when you see on a special teams play an extra point, Laramie Tunsil go down with friendly fire, and you're like, holy smokes, here it is. Here it is. How much more could you possibly sustain? How much? Now it's Josh Jones time. Are we going to see Fant flip over and Heck come out? Like, you're playing all these scenarios in your head, and Laramie Tunsil says, hell no, man. Like, let's get this sucker taped up and let me go back out there. Because in my mind, I was thinking, you know what? If Tunsil knows his knee's done for and he's going to have some type of work on it, that's almost a guarantee this offseason, whenever that begins for him. If it's done, tape it up. It's going to get worked on anyway. Let me see what I got. That's the kind of player that Laramie Tunsil is. Believe it or not, think what you want to think about the guy. Dude is what he likes to say everybody else is on this team, a dog.
Yeah, and it was a big deal, of course, that all of these guys that we thought, can we get a couple of these guys back? Everybody comes back. The only guy that doesn't play that, you had any question about was Jerry Hughes. Everybody else was out there. You got, just to have Robert Woods out there, just to get Noah Brown out there. Maybe they don't do something, but they're more of a distraction maybe than some of the young guys were at wide receiver. But the young guys, they did some things as well. I do want to go back to Amari Cooper and the Browns that we faced a few weeks ago. Now, I don't know what in the world happened with Amari Cooper, but he got hurt at some point, somehow, because this was the first game that he played since he, put the Texans in a chokehold with 265 yards. But Sean, let me just point out, I rewatched that game and all of his catches, and Joe Flacco was making some Marino throws except for 2 plays. You remember the one where he beats D'Angelo Ross and there was no Petrie help, and that was, definitely on the Texans. There was the other one first, I think it might have been like nearly the beginning of the game where they threw it over the top. They beat Steven Nelson. Yeah, first play. But after that, the rest of those throws were just great throws by Joe Flacco. And let me say, I watched early in this game, and there was a play where Amari Cooper was near the goal line. He makes the catch near the sideline, and he gets up, and there was nothing to it. There was nothing to it. And at that point, I thought, he's not right. He's not right. And you know what? I don't think he was right, because there's no way that they hold him. This guy, one of the best guys in the league right now, that they just totally hold him after that. And, Stingley did a good job. The Texans did a good job. But I also believe, you got to say that, hey, they had an injury issue too.
Well, Cooper had been banged up, coming into this week, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. He hadn't played since the Texans game.
Well, but none of their starters really had played in the last 16 days. I mean, they were resting guys. That was kind of edge Cleveland. Their starters basically had 16 days of rest, where your Texans only had 7. But particularly with Cooper, he'd been banged up. Now, showed up on the injury report earlier this week, like rest day, but there was also a designation with a heel. So it could have been a heel. Yeah. Typically, there's some other things going on. And look, sometimes guys get banged up and you just can't tell. They know it. You can't see it. You could watch it over and over again. But yeah, you're right. I think it was probably a little bit of that, but I think it was also a lot of bit of this. I don't think it was really anything schematically that the Texans did much in terms of adjusting their game plan. You have to think about it like this. Like, okay, if you got CJ Stroud going at quarterback versus Davis Mills, you're going to do some things differently. If you have Jimmy Ward as your safety versus now DeAndre Houston Carson and Jalen Petrie back there, you're going to do some things differently. Ward sees the game differently. DeAndre Carson sees the game differently, communicates differently with Jalen Petrie. When you have Nelson and Stingley as your corners, they're going to communicate and see things a little bit differently than maybe a D'Angelo Ross or whoever else is back there, right? And so I think in that sense, yeah, maybe you do some things differently schematically, but they made adjustments. Jalen Petrie said earlier this week that they, as a safety group, but particularly him, took what happened against the Browns very personal, and he knew that he had to fix it. Now, there are some things with his game that maybe can't be corrected, but just coming with experience and time, and as he'll grow, I think it's incredible the amount of adjustment that a guy like Jalen Petrie did over the course of the last 3 weeks to be in better position. Now, look, he had a bad series or two tonight. There's no question. And it hurt at the time a little bit, the Texans defensively, but they were able to get to Flacco, which to me is the difference maker. Flacco makes hell of a throws 3 weeks ago because he had time to do so.
Yeah.
Tonight it was not the case. Now, you didn't hit Flacco 12 times and sack him 6 times, but you hurried some throws. Barnett, the pressure to force a poor decision and to get Elijah Moore and Flacco off on on different pages, that was a difference maker. The pressure forced a throw out of him. Maybe if he has a hair second longer to make a decision, he airmails that ball or throws it out of bounds. Who knows?
I didn't do the math, but it seemed like D'Amico dialed up some blitzes that I didn't see him dialing up early in the Browns game, or really in the first Browns game much at all. I just thought there was more variety. There was some timely blitzes as well. I thought all that stuff matters. At least, even if you didn't get there a couple of times, you just get in his head a little bit. You make him think a little bit, and that's part of the whole cat and mouse game. One of the things I got to talk about, Shaun, before we get going is Nick Caserio. Look, that guy took some hits over the last few years from Texans fans. Mm-hmm. We didn't like a lot of the stuff that he did. A lot of this stuff, we're not sure if it worked out. Kenyon Green, we were worried about Stingley a few weeks ago, the injuries. You had some questionable picks we weren't sure of. I mean, there was a lot of stuff with Nick Caserio. Let me just throw this at you. This is Nick Caserio's draft picks in their first ever playoff game. First ever playoff game. CJ Stroud, you know that story. 3rd round pick Nico Collins, 6 catches, 96 yards, 1 touchdown. 5th round pick Nick Caserio. Brevin Jordan, 76-yard touchdown pass. 1st round pick Will Anderson, 1 sack, and one tackle for loss while playing on a bum ankle. Third round pick Christian Harris, 8 tackles, 1 sack, 2 TFLs, and a pick 6. And hey, how about second round pick John Mechie, 3 catches, 44 yards, and a 9-yard run. And then the guys that aren't going to show up much in the stats, but they had good games. Second round pick Juice Scruggs and first round pick Derek Stingley looked good. And this isn't even with Tank Dell and Jared Patterson, who didn't get a chance to play, but we know what those guys can do.
Sure. You mean you could take it a little bit further? I know you're just talking about draft choices, and look, the proof is in the results, right? But go out and talk about the acquisitions, in free agency and the talent evaluation from guys that he brought in off the street, the last couple of years during the lean years, the crap years, the teardown years. Blake Cashman, second on the team in tackles tonight. Who's been larger than Blake Cashman down the stretch, being that solid thumper, that consistent guy in coverage, as that linebacker for the Texans the last month, coming back from injury, performing the way that he did tonight. To me, he was just as important as a guy like Will Anderson and Jonathan Grenard, as those guys coming into this game limited. Blake Cashman was going to be that guy that, man, you really needed to step up and make plays and contain the run and prevent, a guy like David Njoku from getting loose underneath, which, look, you know what? You were going to give something up tonight. You wanted to limit the explosives. You wanted to shut down the run game. The Browns were going to have to dial up the quick pass game. They did that a couple of times tonight. It did hurt you a couple of times with the explosives. Njoku had 1 or 2 of them, I think it was, for big gains, and maybe the touchdown too earlier. And so you go up and down the list, man. Derek Barnett, like I'd said, I don't know, how the executive of the year kind of a thing shakes out, what's being talked about. Nick Caserio, if I was to guess, is probably going to get about as much respect as this Texans team got coming into this game against the Browns, to be honest with you, which is little to none. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. D'Amico Ryans, absolute X factor. And the fact that, what he'd said 2 weeks ago, this stuck out to me. And I think people need to talk about this more. And when there's time to do it, we could focus on it even more, because this is a massive offseason for the Texans whenever that begins. But the fact that D'Amico Ryans said this, the way that he'd said it, they see football the same between him and Caserio. It's evident, man. It's evident. The talent evaluation, being able to identify guys that can help this football team right now. You could be in the system for a week. You could be in the system for a couple of days. Kareem Jackson, right? Come on down and contribute. Help us out. All of that's been valuable for the Texans.
Yeah, another thing that, Caserio just took bullets for, machine gun style bullets for. I don't think you and I were quite as upset, but we were questioning trading all those picks and the picks that he gave up to get Will Anderson. With this game, the Texans, guess what? They're going to have a better pick because they traded the Browns pick instead of the Texans pick. And that's probably one of our biggest criticisms of that deal. He wins. Caserio wins because guess what? He traded away the right first round pick. And it turns out it was a late first round. You're not getting Will Anderson, Arizona Cardinals, with a late first round pick. You're not getting Will Anderson with the 12th pick that you got from us last year. You didn't get Will Anderson with that 33rd. We got Will Anderson. That was the right move. He won that night.
Yeah. I never questioned it, man. I mean, if you're going to be bold, be bold. And an organization that had self-inflicted, but put themselves through what they did over the course of the last, 3.5 years going into the draft this past April, you had to be bold and you had to do whatever it was going to take. When, you knew from day one, when you weren't going to have that number 1 overall pick, it was time to go to work and you had to make the right decision on a quarterback. And maybe you could even couch it like this: our backs up are against the wall. We're just going to go get the second best guy in this draft and see what we can do with CJ Stroud. I don't care how you couch it. You may never know the truth. You may never know how much if any at all. Cal had to do with what they did at number 2 overall. If that trade up for Will was really a trade up for CJ Stroud, however you wanted to couch them manipulating the draft, doesn't matter. They got 2 cornerstone pieces with picks 2 and 3 in this draft. And in your mind, before they play a snap of football, this could be the start of something beautiful, but it could be an absolute miss on both. I think by now you can see it won't be, it hasn't been, it's not. This, in fact, is the start of something really, really special, I think, around here, so long as those 2 guys particularly, stay healthy and can suit up every weekend for the Texans.
The thing about being an NFL GM is you're going to have misses. You're going to screw stuff up. You're going to have big misses. Sometimes you swing big and you miss big. Mm-hmm. But, you have to look and judge these guys by all of the decisions, and we start adding them up. And as we've gone along this year, there's more and more in that. Oh, he got that one right. That's in the check column. That's in the check column. That's in the check column. And maybe none of it matters without CJ Stroud. Probably a lot of it doesn't matter without CJ Stroud. But, so much of that stuff is coming up roses. Even if Kenyon Green, falls through, Jalen Petrie, I don't know. I watched him in this game, and I keep going, what do they see in him? I don't get it. I still don't think he knows that he has arms and hands, but but those can be misses because you made so many huge hits. It looks like.
Yeah, look, I can see the absolute potential in Jalen Petrie, and what he's missing on, those are correctable things. And I think over time, you can harness some of those things in. You want a guy that has that aggressive nature to him, that recklessness, but also is a student of the game and of his craft, and just hadn't figured a way to put the 2 together yet. I'll tell you what, I trust DeMeco Ryans and this defensive staff, however much it is maintained this offseason, who we can get to stick around. And presumably not everybody's going to be back. It's the NFL. It happens that way. But as long as DeMeco's heading this thing up, I trust that he's going to be able to fix these young guys, at least, the correctable things, and get Jalen to, focus on, his particular job within the scheme. DeMeco called it dirty eyes, where what you're supposed to do, but you don't trust it all the way because you have a wandering eye. You see this, and you're not trusting your teammate to be in the right area and make a play. So you try to go up and make a play, but, you're costing the team by not playing discipline, not playing within the scheme. You hear that used all the time, a lot with the defensive line, rushing together, doing your job. Sacks will come. Don't aim for stats and stats. If you do your job, that's going to come naturally. So true. You've seen it over the course of the last couple of months with Will Anderson's results, Jonathan Grenard's results, throughout the entire season. So I don't worry about that with him. Second year, it's been a pretty fruitful one, to be honest with you. He's getting some fantastic on-the-job training and some big-time moments. So from him, you want to go house money, fine. But the fact that you can pull his butt off of a field and replace him with a guy like Adrian Amos or a DeAndre Carson, when you lost MJ Stewart and Eric Murray so early this season, that's another testament to DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio and their talent evaluation.
Yeah, and it also helps that DeMeco is probably making these guys look better. We should say that. It helps to have a DeMeco Ryans that maybe gets the most out of some of these guys that Caserio is giving him. Maybe the other coaches that we saw over the last 2 years weren't getting the most out of him. I just want to ask you, Shaun, because you were in the locker room, anything that we haven't talked about that you saw from the guys in the locker room, anything that you heard from any of them that's worth talking about?
Man, there's a lot. I talked to a lot of guys. They all kind of went at the same time. I missed 2 dudes that I wish I could have been on, but I made a choice. It was like Nico went at the same time as Jonathan Grenard, as Brevin Jordan. It was just kind of crazy. Brevin was really good, I heard. Jonathan Grenard was fantastic. But I have to say, Nico Collins and Will Anderson, there's no element of them playing with house money, man. They're hungry, and this is a moment that they believe is theirs to take. And Will Anderson was asked, right off the bat, hey, what was it going to take tonight for you to come off of that football field? And he said something to the effect of, good Lord was going to have to, say it was my time or something. Like he was going to have to die, on this football field for them to carry him off. And that was the only way that was going to happen. And I just thought it was, pretty amazing. I'd said, hey, look, after the injury, you get banged up there a little bit. You hit the medical tent, you're going out, you're doing sprints, and boom, you're right back in the football game. It's like you got stronger. It's something clicked. And it's just that immeasurable belief factor that I think is just you can't measure. And I think that's what you saw on display tonight with a guy like Will Anderson. And that's a large part what fuels this team. And I just think the belief throughout. You could talk to a rookie, you could talk to 7-8 year vet, guy like George Fant, whoever, didn't matter. It's the same across the board. So I think that was my biggest takeaway from the locker room, just off the top of my head. It's going to be interesting throughout the week. You see, it depends on how things shake out tomorrow. You're going to be playing the Ravens, whatever the case may be, home, away, whoever it is next weekend. That's what the focus is going to become. And I got to say, we're going to end up talking about that game just like we did this one. So long as you got number 7 back there, and there's a chance that your defense can be close to full strength in terms of guys being available, they're going to have a chance to win. And again, when you can have a guy like Will Anderson, if he's 30%, 40%, doesn't matter, out on the football field, he's going to give you 100. You know that. And so you got to feel pretty good about it in that respect. And so that belief factor, that was my biggest takeaway from postgame.
Yeah, I got to say this just from my perspective of watching Houston NFL football for these years, Oilers, Texans. I just want to tell the fans out there, if you're a younger fan or if you haven't, followed this stuff for that long, I want you people to enjoy this no matter what happens next week. What's happening right now is about as fun as you can have watching an NFL team. You got all of these young guys that are performing out of their mind. You're overachieving. There's no expectation. You're shocked at everything that they do that's great. This is unbelievable. This is really the most anticipating greatness that I've had for a Houston NFL team. You got to go back probably to the Oilers in the early 90s, because I knew, we got Warren Moon, and then they brought in Jack Pardee, and I thought, that's a great coach. And we got and I'm looking around and there's all this talent everywhere. And that's the same thing it is with the Texans. When Deshaun came in, I was excited, but I was scared because, Bill O'Brien, I didn't trust him, never trusted him. Just like I think every fan, nobody trusted him. Nobody trusted Bill O'Brien. Mm-hmm. I don't think there was much trust in the general managers at that time either. There's been no point in this organization's history where you could be this excited. I mean, as good as the Texans were in 11 and 12, Matt Schaub's going to win a Super Bowl? I don't know about that. I don't trust that guy late in games, whatever. I mean, this is it, Sean. It's been almost 30 years.
What's
it's so cool. Just like bask in it for the next few days.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. If I was to kind of compare what we might be experiencing and seeing with this team to, another sport, another team that we'd kind of seen this from in town. Maybe this is the 2015 Astros, like where you're like, whoa, holy crap. Like they did just enough to get in. And then boom, you push the Royals to, a game 6 and man, this could be us. I don't know. Is it 2017? Who knows? Just enjoy the ride. But you referenced the Schaub Texans. Like, I think it's so funny, and it's really maybe maybe the epitome of, what we do to ourselves, and have done over the course of time as Houston sports fans. We look back upon our past way more fondly than we did whenever we were living it. I don't remember at any point in time feeling like any Schaub-led Texans team had a chance, a real chance to win a Super Bowl, much less get to an AFC championship game.
And that's even though you and I, we saw Trent Dilfer win a Super Bowl. We saw some, I've seen some, kind of crummy quarterbacks over the history of the NFL win a Super, and still, even with all that, I'm like, wait a second, Schaub. I mean, we have got to luck into this thing as big as you can luck into it to get Schaub to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I just think it's funny, like how people talk about those days now, and it really wasn't that long ago, And it's just like, man, yeah, they had a real opportunity. If Schaub wouldn't have gotten hurt, who knows? It's like, come on, man. Like I'm so ready to just live in this era of Houston Texan football. There's not much you can look back on fondly with what has happened over the 21, 22-year history of this organization. There were some good times. I still remember, enjoying some great regular season wins, some primetime games that wound up as losses, and I had a great night. Fun time covering a team, enjoying it as a fan, whatever the case may be. You might be entering an era of football in Houston that if you're a Love You Blue survivor, if you're a newbie, that you may never experience again in your life. It's not for you to kind of pour over and predict and anticipate. It's just live in the moment, enjoy it, because it goes by really, really fast. Such is life. But I mean, seriously, how often do you get the opportunity on a football team, man, where you get so much young talent to come in at the same time and can really look forward to watching them grow together for the next 3, 4, 5 years and beyond, depending upon who you can and want to pay. That's going to be a very fun part of the process to, look forward to in the coming years.
Yeah. In the NFL, more than any other sport, it changes like that.
Yeah.
There's an injury, something goes wrong, knock on wood. But I mean, I'm not saying anything that we haven't thought about and are scared about. And you go to bed every night and you're like, oh, please and I don't have to say the name of the person, please let this guy stay healthy for the next few years, because man, oh man, it would be fun if he could stay healthy. But I mean, just to have D'Amico and, a coach that I think the fan base just genuinely likes and loves. And Shaun, I guess the final thing that I'll say about D'Amico, because we got to talk about D'Amico just for a second. Being a Houston fan, other sports, other teams and other sports, they get jerks and they win with jerks. And one thing that I love about Houston teams is when they've had their success, the jerks haven't won. The really great guys, the guys that we love, are the coaches. Bum Phillips, we loved him. Great guy. AJ Hinch. We loved AJ Hinch. Great guy. Phil Garner. Larry Durker.
Rudy
T. Guy V. Lewis. You could go. I could
Kelvin.
do this. Kelvin. Kelvin Van Chancellor.
A little bit further.
Van Chancellor. I mean, there's so many in all the sports, and it's not the bad guys that we've won with. It's the good guys, and it's so good to have a team that you love the coach and you love the players, and you don't have to go, well, I got to hold my nose for this guy. I love all the rest of them, but I got to hold my nose for this guy. At this point, the Texans don't have the hold your nose guy right now.
They don't. And I don't even want to imagine what could have been, because you might have to hold your nose if, certain scenarios don't play out like they did. But it also would have meant that, we wouldn't have endured the last 3.5 years as Houston Texan fans like we did. But I'm glad you don't have to go through those hypotheticals and do revisionist history and stuff like that. To heck with it. But you're right. This team, for everything the organization, had put itself through, put its fans through, alienated them, the whole bit, they've really turned on a dime, and they've got something. They're incredibly fun to watch. They're likable, they're watchable, they're respectable, and those are all of the things that you were counting all of the good people that have made up really good teams, sometimes not great teams, but good teams, competitive teams, perennially really good and competitive teams made up. You're right. Maybe not everybody was a great dude, but hey, look, you know what? There's a reason why ignorance is bliss kind of a thing. There's a reason why I don't necessarily want to know everything possible about a particular player. I just want my football as my football on Sunday. I want my baseball as my baseball. Basketball as my basketball. You get the drift. And sometimes when you're in this business, like you and me, you learn things about particular individuals that you'd rather not have learned or heard or read about or seen, maybe even firsthand. You wish you just wouldn't have, because you think differently of a player. With this Houston Texans team, man, it's for what I've seen and what I know, I'm really, really liking it. And I was proud of NRG Stadium particularly tonight, because I don't know how it played out watching it on TV. You can attest to this a little bit, Robert, but I'll tell you what, there's a stark difference from my view in the press box today versus what I'd witnessed week 16 when the Cleveland Browns came into NRG. There's a lot more Browns fans there then than there were tonight. A lot more brown, a lot more orange then than there was tonight. I was skeptical coming in. Purple lot was full of them. Orange lot, that's all that was there. It's like the entire city of Cleveland had transported into the orange lot outside of the Astrodome between that and NRG tonight. I was like, whoa, this is going to be interesting. Texan fans showed up loud and proud. The hashtag We Are Texans, all the fans, they should be very, very proud of themselves tonight for representing the football team and factoring into this game, because that is too something that all of the players recognized afterwards.
Yeah, it sounded great at home. I felt like this was the Texans crowd that I saw that JJ Watt interception game. It was that was the kind of electricity that you saw there. It's hard to compare, like, oh, was it a little bit better, a little bit worse, but at least it was more like that than the Bill O'Brien playoff games that I remember. I went to most of those games. So, to me, yeah, it definitely sounded pretty good. A couple of things. Shaun's going to have a pretty big announcement, so stay tuned to that as we continue to do the shows. He's got a real great opportunity coming up pretty soon. Also, we'll do our midweek show on Wednesday, so we're going to preview the next game, talk about all the news that's going on. Hopefully, we don't have to be talking about an injury report like we've had to do so many for the recent weeks. That would be nice to have a whole show on Wednesday without going over the 4,000 injuries.
I mean, I'm not going to be breaking any news to you right here. You're going to be watching the same guys, looking out, listening for the same guys this week as you did the last few weeks going into the next game. Noah Brown, that's a big one. The fact that the Cleveland Browns tonight had to prepare for, that particular receiver, what he looks like in their offensive scheme, that's a difference maker, man. The fact that you may not have him going into next weekend, that's a big one. You're going to have to look out for Brown, Woods, Tunsil, JG, Anderson, your regulars. I hate to say it, but your regular guys. And so, make sure you keep it here on Houston Sports Talk during the week. Hit us up on Twitter. I've got fresh content every day at Shaun Bijani, sportsradio610.com every single day, updates, and I'll have a complete breakdown of this game. That's probably going to keep my ass up to about 4:00 in the morning. I'm guessing tonight, trying to put it together for you guys. So you'll be able to check it out tomorrow morning at some point.
Yeah, definitely Rockets content. I had a guest last week. I have somebody planned for tomorrow. So on a Sunday, you're like, oh, I don't have any Houston sports because usually I'm used to Texans at noon on Sunday. Well, around a little bit after that time, look for a show that we're going to throw up there. And also just want to thank you guys and, keep bringing people aboard. I really appreciate, all the new fans that we're getting and love it. Just amazed at how many more people are watching and listening. And I hope this continues that this just isn't a Texan thing, that you guys will stay with us because, there'll be a Texans offseason. We'll be talking about it, but the other stuff comes up. And hey, the Astros, by the way, they have a pretty good little organization over there, and they're doing a lot of good stuff. And the Rockets, have really been a surprise this year and been fun to watch, and a lot of fun stuff with them. But thanks everybody who's out there for your comments. And we really appreciate it. The Texans, the Houston Texans, that won 3 games last year, 3 games the entire season, have now won 11 games. And they are 2 wins away. Put that in your brain for a second. They are 2 wins away, Shaun, from a Super Bowl. Super Bowl.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Enjoy the ride, man. I'm here for it.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube and commenting on the videos. Listen to Houston Sports Talk on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google. Don't forget to tell a friend and share our show on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.